So glad you're here on this Friday. Our storm watch coverage continues and likely will for some time yet, because this storm is only just getting going. This is just the beginning phase of it. It will continue through the weekend, and there's a lot of detail here with this forecast. Want to show you what's going on. Now, just during the mornings, just to give you a bit of background, we have a meteorological briefing where we talk to the meteorologists and we talk about the science behind everything. And then, of course, our job is to present it to you so it kind of makes sense and show you the maps. But what we were discussing this morning is that the meteorologists have been tweaking the forecast. So the data that you're seeing for Toronto in the forecast is going to change slightly based on some new computer model data. And that's frankly why we go into storm watch, because there are so many details and some tweaks that need to happen. This isn't going to change likely for a while. Freezing rain warning in place. This is issued by Environment Canada. Our job is to present it to you, and it's extensive, obviously, as you can see from the geographic scope of it. What we're dealing with here is the radar. So this is the real-time precipitation, green being rain, mixing and pellets and freezing rain in pink. So there's not that much of it, most of it relegated to the southeast of the province at this point. And then snowfall. There will be quite a bit of snowfall and quite a difference in forecast and conditions and impact, if you will, from the storm from Toronto downtown versus Barrie, which is not all that far of a drive. What's that, like an hour and a half, an hour and 3/4, 2 hours, depending on where you start from. Precipitation type forecast, again, snowfall up in this area will continue for the weekend. Where it gets really dicey is this line right here. And we've had to change the forecast because it's trending a little bit cooler now. And we're going to be seeing this morning the mixing there. And now if you're just right, say from Toronto going to Hamilton, you're likely to run into rain along the lakeshore. But there's going to be some mixing, pellets, freezing rain, and then Friday afternoon you can see that this is going to be just diving down a little bit further south. It's rain through the south and west. So it overall is quite a messy system along this frontal boundary, and it's just because of the location of the boundary draped right over where millions of people live that is going to cause for a few headaches here behind the scenes, definitely. But we're doing our best to keep you up to date with what's going on. It is going to be a significant amount of snowfall for some, to the tune of 15 centimeters, Ottawa, Montreal. I would say locally upwards, Montreal could go 30 centimeters quite easily, and then Barrie's going to end up in about 5 to 10 at least. Toronto, about 5 centimeters of snow. But it's because of that mixing that's coming in that's going to cause the problems, and then 15 to 30 millimeters of rainfall through the south and west. So definitely watching this situation closely. I want to go over to Tom right now before we get into the next section of this forecast and talk to Tom about the road conditions this morning, because we've had round one come through. There was some freezing rain. Has it caused problems on the roads, Tom? Well, I mean, it's not going to be a great weekend. Just also a reminder to download the Beat the Traffic app, because you will likely need that if you have travel plans, and a lot of people do, of course, this upcoming weekend. It'll help you get from point A to point B. 7-day forecast in Toronto. Again, the messy system continues until Sunday. Monday, we start to get a break, although the temperatures will be a little bit cooler for Tuesday. Hamilton, again, watch for the freezing rain, the pellets, and the rainfall the next day. Our storm watch coverage continues. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday, because there's a lot going on with this system. It has already begun. The first round came through overnight while you were sleeping, or at least most of you were probably sleeping. We saw a little bit of a break, but there's more to come. This is just the beginning phase of a multi-day event for southern Ontario. There are widespread freezing rain warnings in place, including the city of Toronto. And we're not on the cusp of it. We're right in the middle of it all. This freezing rain warning is going to likely stay in place for some time, because the worst of this freezing rain event will happen overnight Saturday and into Sunday morning, we expect. This is real-time data. This is the real-time radar right now, where we get rainfall around Lake Erie, through the Niagara region, upstate and western New York, getting rain from this mostly, although there's some mixing here. See the pink around Kingston and Belleville, or Brockville, I should say. That is the mixing, pellets, freezing rain. To the north, blue is snowfall. Ottawa and Montreal, this is going to be a big snowstorm. Not expecting to see mixing so much there. So if you're trying to get to the nation's capital or to Montreal in the next couple of days, it's going to be a snowstorm there. So that's the real-time radar. We're seeing a little bit of a break between the snow and the rain to the south, but right in sandwiched in between, there is the possibility of seeing some mixing. And this obviously is a dangerous situation on the roadways. I would advise to defer your travel if possible if you're in this zone during these time frames, just because the conditions can be very, very poor, and we will continue to see this boundary draped across, right across the GTA, frankly, for the next day and a half as the system continues its track, although we do see possibly a small break by Saturday morning, but not a big break at all. Then we're going to get into the next round, Saturday evening through Sunday morning, especially with rain, freezing rain, possible accretion. It could end up being like that much ice on portions of, on cars, on roadways and that sort of thing. So that's going to cause a problem, Tom, obviously, but the first round has already run through. What are you seeing out there on the roads? Well, as we look at our long range, Saturday overall, Sunday, still not great weather. The possibility of that freezing rain warning, of course, remains in place for the city of Toronto. So Saturday, Sunday, the system still is going. There is a slight warm up and then it cools down yet again on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday being Christmas, -1, a little bit of flurry activity in the forecast. 7-day forecast for Hamilton. Again, near the lake shores, not so much. In terms of the mixing, it'll be rain, but just about a kilometer or two inland, and you're going to be possibly running into the mixing and pelt. Our storm watch coverage continues. We'll have Tom's update coming up for you on the roads in just a moment to help you beat the traffic, because, of course, we have a lot of people who depend on this forecast, and that's obviously why we're in storm watch, because of the nature of this storm, but also the duration and the geographic scope. I mean, really from Ontario all the way into Atlantic Canada, there will be an impact from this storm system. And then, of course, you take the timing of it all, being the last weekend before Christmas. A lot of people have travel plans to visit family and friends. You want to get your last minute shopping done. Not great. It's not great to see a freezing rain warning this extensive across southern Ontario, but that's the case. We're not expecting to see this end anytime soon because, frankly, the worst of the freezing rain has yet to come. Sure, we had a round overnight last night while you were sleeping, but for the most part, the conditions aren't all that bad in southern Ontario right now. The green is rain through the southwest and through the Niagara area, and if you're heading up into Buffalo. So, travel right now from Toronto to Buffalo is really not that bad. But when you go from Toronto to Barrie, there is a huge change in the weather because there is a lot of snowfall in the northern regions around Georgian Bay. Sandwiched right in the middle, though, although you see a break in the radar right now, that's where the potential today and this evening is for freezing rain, ice pellets, and mixing. That can cause some very sloppy and messy, icy roads. There's the precipitation type forecast for this morning. And then as we head into the afternoon and evening, that line sinks south just a tad to include Kitchener-Waterloo, Guelph, Toronto, up toward Kingston, areas back into, say, Grand Bend if you're heading that way. This frontal boundary is draped across southern Ontario for a long time. And because of the nature of that, it's really, frankly, half a degree, and sometimes when we talk about a degree making all the difference, in this particular scenario, half a degree can make all the difference. So we just need to be watching this closely and be aware that the conditions can deteriorate quite rapidly. Certainly snowfall between now and Saturday will be highest in Ottawa and higher yet in Montreal. Back into Barrie, 5 to 10 centimeters of snow. Toronto, we'll see about 5. And then further south, it's all rainfall, but it's that sandwiched part in the middle that has the problems associated with it because of the extensive icing. We're calling this an ice storm potential across southern Ontario. Obviously, Environment Canada, Tom having issued that freezing rain warning. We're all in line with this in terms of the forecast, so this could be a very precarious situation Saturday night and into Sunday. The impact will be pretty big across the GTA, obviously. Yeah, I mean, it looks good right now. This first little bit of the storm isn't causing that much of a problem, but the conditions will deteriorate more so Saturday night and into Sunday. Right in this period here, temperatures are going to be at about freezing. They warm up eventually to 3 on Sunday, but in the morning of Sunday, it could be very icy out there. Hamilton, again, away from the lake shores is the better chance of getting that mixing and ice pellet situation. And then you see our forecast for Christmas Day at -1. Oshawa -1 for Christmas Day. And Christmas Eve day is colder at -8 with cloudy conditions expected. Our storm watch coverage continues. A little bit of maybe a word of advice, if I can offer that to you, would be as you're driving around and getting from point A to point B across southern Ontario today, including in the GTA, just watching the temperature gauge on your dash in your car. If you're sitting at the freezing mark or just slightly below. Perhaps consider driving for conditions that may result in some freezing rain or some pellets if indeed you have precipitation going on around you, because there is a widespread freezing rain warning in place. And this is issued from Environment Canada. We broadcast it to you. It's our mandate, obviously, here at the Weather Network. But notice how Toronto is right pretty much in the middle of it all. Sometimes you see these warnings and Toronto's right on the edge, as is Hamilton here, so it could kind of go either way. Toronto's right in the middle of it all. So that is a concern, because you've got millions of people obviously trying to get around and get everything done. There has already been a round of freezing rain and mixing that has gone through from the south and west and moved across, but it happened through the overnight. Now it's up toward the Cobourg area, Brockville, Kingston, a little bit of mixing, but there's not a lot of it at this point in time. Snow in blue, Ottawa and Montreal, big snow. In fact, Montreal might end up with over a foot of snow between now and Sunday. Then to the south, rainfall. I'm just seeing in particular an area, it looks like to be around St. Mary's, with some bands of heavier rain coming through. The mixing, we're not seeing so much of it right now in between those two lines, but there's the potential this morning, and then the freezing line moves south just slightly for the afternoon and evening. So the potential of icing, pellets, mixing of rain and snow, slushy, icy conditions, and all in out freezing rain is possible even through this afternoon and for the drive home. It may not be great. You know, considering the conditions, they're really not all that bad. We're going to talk to Tom in just a moment. But the conditions haven't been all that bad from this first round of weather. So don't be fooled in thinking, okay, well, the storm's over and my drive home will be okay. The drive home may be worse because of the onset of this wet weather and possibly freezing conditions that continue along the boundary, because the boundary is draped across southern Ontario. And the snow totals will be high up into the Barrie area, 5 to 10 centimeters, Ottawa, Montreal, bigger snow. So what do you think about that, Tom? I mean, the drive in hasn't been all that bad, but what about the drive home later today in the GTA? Also want to mention, if you're at your desk today, we have our programming live streaming on the web at theweathernetwork.com now, so a great way to keep up to date with what's going on in this forecast, because of course we've got all our resources on it. Our traffic conditions and updates will continue throughout the day as well. 7-day forecast in Hamilton brings us. Our storm watch coverage continues, and with good reason, because we've got a multi-day event ahead of us. The beginning, well, it's only just begun, frankly. So this is going to be a possible ice storm developing in Ontario and also southern Quebec. I mean, if you're traveling to Ottawa or to Montreal, to Ottawa, obviously, then you are going to be running into big-time snowfall for those areas. For Toronto, on the other hand, sandwiched right in the middle of a widespread freezing rain warning for southern Ontario. This is likely not to change anytime soon, because the worst of this may happen Saturday into Sunday. Right now, it's not that bad out there. We have rainfall through southwest Ontario. The mixing is out into the south and east, but not in Ottawa, still in snowfall in the nation's capital. Snowfall up toward Barrie. So really, conditions between Toronto and Barrie are so vastly different. We do have to be ready for mixing and freezing rain. This is the potential for this morning. The line moves further south a little bit by this afternoon and evening, so the drive home in Toronto may not be all that great. But considering that we could have a very big icy storm or an ice storm on our hands, we do need to be prepared. And I would strongly encourage you to take the time to figure out whether or not you have all of the materials at your disposal should the power go out. Here's Kasia right now with a reminder of what to put in that kit.
Yeah, we're at a Home Hardware in Burlington where we're talking about emergency preparedness. And, you know, the system is very complex, so it's really important to keep it tuned in to the Weather Network or theweathernetwork.com. But in the case that you lose power, it's a good idea to have a weather radio. This one is powered by crank, but there are some weather radios that need batteries. We're talking to Kyle now. What are some other items that you would recommend should we lose power?
Well, you just touched on batteries are big importance. I'd check all your batteries, check your equipment before the storm to know what you need to have prepared. Some other things are important: flashlight, lanterns, candles and matches. Make sure you have yourself a good full lighter, and some blankets to keep warm in case you do lose your heat or power.
Sure. And of course, we were talking about emergency preparedness in our vehicles as well, and this is a really important one to have as well.
Good one to carry with you, yeah, okay. Just in case.
Great tips. Thanks so much, Kyle. Now back to you inside.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Kasia. We're going to take a look actually at traffic in just a moment. Just want to bring you a reminder of the numbers to call and all three wind 9463 numerically if you have storm reports to share with us or the impact of the storm. Let's find out what the impact has been on the roads. Here's Tom. Well, you know, it's interesting because you mentioned that the temperatures will drop. And, you know, when we talk about temperatures in the minus 20s, you know, a 1 to 2 degree difference is really not that big a deal. But when you're talking about the freezing mark, it is a huge deal. And half a degree difference can make all the difference with regard to the type of precipitation we see. So the temperatures are expected to drop slightly through the evening, and that could result in some icing conditions. So be forewarned of that. The 7-day forecast does get sunnier, though. Our storm watch coverage continues here on the Weather Network, bringing you regular updates to give you an idea of what's going on in real time, because this is a messy system, to put it bluntly, because there is a freezing line that's quite extensive and remains over the GTA for a long time, right through the weekend. And there is a freezing rain warning from Environment Canada that's quite extensive for much of southern Ontario. Notice that how the south of the 401 along the north side of Lake Erie, not in the freezing rain, and that's because we're looking at mostly rainfall through those regions, quite a bit, 30 to 50 millimeters of rain. So that's going to be the situation there. But this is where the potential, especially Saturday into Sunday, that particular period, so Sunday morning travel, heading to church, that kind of thing, could be a problem because of the icing that is going to likely occur. What's happening right now is that we have rainfall in green through these regions. So really the travel from Toronto down toward Hamilton, Niagara, Buffalo, it's not that bad right now. You'll drive through rain certainly, but that's not that much of a problem as opposed to icing and freezing rain, which is the case through the Brockville, Kingston area, through Cobourg, and then you've got snowfall to the north in blue. These areas in blue can see quite a bit of snow between now and Sunday. I'll show you some totals in a moment. Just want to focus on the types here, because through this morning, the mixing line is right along the north side of Lake Ontario, through the GTA, right on the edge of it, Kitchener, Waterloo, Guelph, up toward Goderich, Grand Bend. And then Friday afternoon, so this afternoon and evening, you see it just sinks a little bit further south, but not a big change in that mixing line. And that's because of the frontal boundary that's draped across a good portion of southern Ontario heading into this evening. Widespread precipitation, Ottawa and Montreal. If you're traveling there, there is going to be a big snow continuing through Sunday. Ottawa, 10 to 15, maybe 20 centimeters of snow, and we're thinking possibly as high as 30 centimeters plus in Montreal. Barrie, Georgian Bay District through the Bruce Peninsula, likely to stay in snowfall through this whole thing. And then again, I was talking about the big rain to the south. The concern for the icing is mostly Saturday into Sunday. So an ice storm, we've been talking about that, tweeting about it, and also to keep tabs on the situation. Definitely, as our storm watch coverage continues, I'd encourage you to be checking in with us on any of your digital platforms and your mobile devices throughout the weekend, just so that you really have the latest information with you. Let's turn it over to Tom and find out what our drive has been like. Overall, though, Tom, this first round hasn't been all that bad for the GTA, right? Well, long range gives us a reprieve by the time we get to Monday, Tuesday, Christmas Day, a little bit of flurry activity in the forecast. 7-day forecast for Hamilton. Again, watch for the freezing away from the lakes. And then -3 on Monday with bright skies, but still cloudy on Tuesday, Wednesday. Our storm watch coverage continues. Thank you so much for getting up to date. It's so important to know what is going on. And of course, we're talking about millions of people all scattered around the GTA. And the forecast can be quite, actually the weather, I should say, can be so different whether you're in Oshawa to Hamilton or through up towards, say, Orangeville versus downtown Toronto. I mean, the scope of this is quite widespread. There are freezing rain warnings in place for such a large swath of southern Ontario. We're likely not to see this end for anytime soon, because the worst of the freezing may occur later today, but also late Saturday and into Sunday. Right now, the current radar shows us that there's not that much mixing, if there is any at all, through this pink area here through the south and east. Icing, pellets, freezing rain, snow to the north of that through Ottawa and back into the Barrie region, the Bruce Peninsula, seeing some snow, and then rainfall to the south. So where we want to go right now is just up into the Barrie area, and that's where we find Mike Arsenault this morning. Mike, Tom was talking about looking at the traffic cameras. It looks like the precipitation has changed over to rain in Barrie. Can you confirm that? Thanks, Mike. And Mike makes a really good point about the snow being so different than the last storm that happened last weekend. Last weekend didn't have as much moisture. We were able to almost blow it off, use your sleeve kind of thing. This snow is more moisture laden. It's very heavy, wet snow that's going to be falling in these regions in the blue through this afternoon and through the evening. And then the mixing line through Guelph, Kitchener-Waterloo, the GTA, and that will continue as we head into later on to this evening. Saturday night through Sunday, that's where we're talking about the ice storm potential and the problems that may ensue here. Tom, as we were talking about in our meteorological briefing, we could be talking about an ice accretion of several millimeters, many millimeters in fact, and if that materializes, it's going to cause problems for not only the roads, but power lines too. A lot of people thinking about shopping, Tom, for sure. 7-day forecast in Toronto. Again, we talked about the freezing rain warning. By Monday, things clear up. It's still cold. It's going to be colder yet on Tuesday. A little bit of a warming trend by midweek, which of course is Christmas next week. 7-day forecast in Hamilton. Freezing rain away from the lakes. -3 on Monday, -6 on Tuesday. With again, a little bit of flurry activity by the end of the week, but not a big deal. It is a bit of a messy situation, actually a lot of a messy situation in Ontario. Thank you so much for joining us. We are Canada's #1 source for complete and accurate weather. And when it comes to the weather in the GTA today and through the weekend, an ice storm is brewing. And that is of serious concern because in some cases we could be looking at quite a bit of ice on top of, well, cars, but roadways as well. This being a very busy travel weekend because a lot of people want to get that last minute shopping run done. Also visiting family and friends, heading to church, that kind of thing. Freezing rain warnings are in place across southern Ontario in a very wide area. Notice that the south is not, because that's expected to be rainfall mostly. But as we look at our radar right now in terms of what is happening, we have rain in the green. So sure, driving through the rain is never fun, but it's not necessarily as dangerous as it is when you have icing, like is the case around Brockville, Kingston, these regions here. Icing, ice pellets, freezing rain, and then snowfall in the blue up toward the north. Actually, in Barrie, we've continued, actually at times we're starting to see, I think Tom was mentioning that at the airport, the reports of rain, but as we check in with Mike Arsenault, who is actually live in Barrie right now with a special guest, he's been talking about how it is actually falling in the form of snowfall right now. So, Mike, what are the conditions out there? And I see you have wrangled a guest who's out in the snow today. She knows exactly what's going on. I don't think, frankly, even if, if you're walking around town and you're doing some shopping, it's actually quite picturesque. It's just when you're traveling on the roads, it can be a problem. Friday afternoon, evening, again, we see that freezing line. That's the concern because driving in rain is never fun, but it's not going to be quite as dangerous down toward Windsor and Chatham as it is through Hamilton, Niagara, Kitchener-Waterloo, Owen Sound through Barrie and Ottawa is going to stay in the snowfall, but up toward Kingston could be a problem. Let's turn it over to Tom and see what our traffic is like this morning. This first round came through, hasn't been all that bad, right? Well, certainly this first round of weather that we experienced overnight last night and now continuing through the day hasn't been all that bad considering what it could have been. We were concerned about an extensive period of freezing rain, especially in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. Certainly we did have it go through, but it happened when most people were sleeping overnight last night and now has moved into southeast Ontario. However, the storm watch coverage continues. Why, you may ask? Because there is a widespread freezing rain warning in place for southern Ontario. Look at the swath of this, not including Ottawa, and it is including Toronto. Typically, sometimes we have, not typically, but sometimes when we have freezing rain warnings, Toronto's just kind of on the edge of it. But notice how Toronto's like right in the middle of it. So that is definitely going to be a concern for these regions. We're going to take a look actually at our warning, or rather our radar right now, where we have rainfall through the south and west. We've got some freezing rain now in the southeast of the province and then snowfall to the north in blue. The freezing line is not going to move all that much from the afternoon through the evening. It might just move down slightly, just a tad by the evening. But the icy conditions through overnight Saturday and into Sunday are of particular concern because of the amount of precipitation that may come in. We have the potential to see ice accretion that will cause a lot of problems with regard to power lines. So there could be some issues with that. We're going to go to Mike Arsenault right now, who's up in the Barrie area. We've been checking in with him because Tom was mentioning how the conditions we're right on the cusp of the snow and the rain. Where Mike is, she is a woman after my own heart on the last minute situation. Thank you so much, Mike. Let's take a look at what's going on the roads right now. Tom, what's it like for people who do want to get some maybe last minute shopping done this morning? Well, the long-range forecast doesn't bring us any really relief until Monday, when the temperatures start to still stay a little bit cold, but at least the sky conditions will improve by Monday. The concern is Saturday and through Sunday for freezing rain. Well, certainly, rolling up our sleeves here at the Weather Network and getting you up to date on what's going on with this big storm that's coming through this weekend. There are freezing rain warnings in place for a large portion of southern Ontario, affecting millions of people. And the concern really is more so Saturday, late day into Sunday and through this region. We actually just in the last few hours updated the forecast for Toronto because the computer models were indicating a little bit of a change. So our meteorologists go in and then they start to tweak it. If you're online at theweathernetwork.com and you're on the forecast page for Toronto, there's a little counter that you'll see at the top and it tells you when the next update comes down. It actually counts down. So you're going to have to watch this closely. And the reason I bring that up is because if we're talking about temperatures in the minus 20s, the difference of a degree or two is not a big deal. But in this kind of scenario, it means all of the difference. It makes all the difference because half a degree can dictate whether or not you've got icing on the roads, black ice, or you've got rain or you've got snow, because we've got it all across southern Ontario. So we do need to be watching the situation closely. There is a freezing line that extends from this is Grand Bend through Kitchener-Waterloo, Guelph, Cambridge, and Toronto, and on the north side of Lake Ontario. And little change as we head through the afternoon and this evening. The drive in today hasn't been all that bad. The drive home may be problematic due to the icing conditions that are expected along this frontal boundary, which is draped across southern Ontario. If you're driving to Buffalo, overall, not bad because it's mostly looking at rain for that area today. And then you can see that there's still quite a bit of what's an easterly flow, and that's really what the concern is. We've got a southerly flow and a northerly flow, and it's all coming together along that boundary. So the conditions are not all that great for driving if you head north up into the Barrie area. This region is in particular seeing quite a bit of snowfall, but the snowfall totals are even higher as you go east toward Bancroft, Ottawa, just north of Kingston in this region here. Montreal could end up with more than a foot of snowfall by the time we get to the end of the weekend. And across southern Ontario, for the most part, south of the 401 is going to be looking at rain. Let's go to Barrie right now, where we find Mike Arsenault, who is looking at the conditions around the Barrie area. He's on the ground to give us an idea of what's going on there. Mike, what's it like? Thanks so much, Mike. And yes, I mean, the snowfall rates are high, and it's also the quality of the snow is very different than the storm system that we saw last weekend. The concern with the ice storm that's impending here is the fact that we could be looking at widespread power outages. And with that, you need to be prepared. Make sure that you at least have an emergency kit prepared and in your home in the event that we should have widespread power outages. 7-day forecast in Toronto. Again, the worst of the storm continues through Sunday. Improvements come on Monday. Now, Wednesday being Christmas Day, Hamilton at -1. But watch for the freezing rain away from the lakeshore. So there is a widespread freezing rain warning in southern Ontario. We have to be mindful of the temperatures. This is all temperature dependent. Certainly we've got precipitation, but a difference of even half a degree can make all the difference in terms of whether we get rain, freezing rain and ice pellets, or all snow. I'm going to show you the freezing rain warning as it stands right now from Environment Canada. It's pretty widespread. You can see Toronto is right smack dab in the middle of it all. As you head up to Barrie, there is still a freezing rain warning in place, although we're looking at this point in time at mostly snowfall. But that's not to say that we don't see any mixing or freezing rain, because the temperatures will be a little bit changeable as we head through the midday. So right now, this is a current snapshot. Rain in green, the mixing through the southeast in the pink, and snowfall up toward Georgian Bay and the Bruce Peninsula. Ottawa and Montreal likely to stay in snowfall throughout the duration of this storm system. Ottawa will probably end up with between 20-25 centimeters of snow, and there is some possibility that Montreal may go over 35 centimeters of snow with this. Toronto, you're right on the line, and that is why we have so much of a concern for the mixing and freezing rain, although mostly the drive into work this morning wasn't all that bad. The drive home may be more problematic than the drive in. And then, of course, snowfall rates. We just talked about Ottawa, Montreal, but Barrie, 5 to 10 centimeters, not out of the question. That's where we find Mike Arsenault right now. 5 to 10 centimeters of snow, Mike, and in terms of the impact that it's having on people where you are, I think for the most part it sounds like people are taking it in stride. Wouldn't you agree? Thanks so much, Mike. Well, I don't think it's going to be all that slippery where we have mostly rainfall, and that's through southwestern Ontario. South of the 401 essentially is a better chance of just staying in rainfall. We can't rule it out necessarily for that corridor. I want to show you what's happening though in the more of the short-term forecast, if you will, heading into the weekend, because we've got a couple of series of it's a series, really, of low-pressure systems that are moving through. So here comes the round for Saturday through Sunday. With that, the potential for freezing rain. The conditions do improve, though, once we get to Monday. But overall, this is going to be possibly an ice storm. If there's impact where you live and you have photos, you have videos, and you can share them with us, we always appreciate your input to the programming. And then we upload.theweathernetwork.com is the address to do so. So the icing concern, that is going to be the issue all through these regions in red Saturday night through Sunday. So waking up on Sunday morning, do be careful when you are heading out, and certainly walking underfoot may be icy. 7-day forecast in Toronto. Saturday, Sunday, the storm continues. Although the temperatures do warm up by later in the day on Sunday, it's the early part of Sunday for the concern in the ice. Monday, Tuesday, now Wednesday being Christmas Day, -1. The white forecast, everybody wants to know, we're going to have a white forecast. I'm going to be tweeting about that and send you the link to our online digital story about that. 7-day forecast for Hamilton. Freezing rain Saturday, Sunday. Improvements come on Monday with a temperature of -3. Gets a little bit colder for Tuesday and a slight moderation. Temperatures sit near the freezing mark for Christmas Day and Boxing Day. Oshawa, again, same concern. Saturday, Sunday, the worst of the storm.